We're going to go over Breast and Eggs Part 2. I had to renew this book twice because I've been so bad about making videos. But anyway, that's okay because it's just like my own little collection that I make available for viewing. But anyway, so it actually, you might hear my laundry machine in the background. I'm sorry. Anyway, so there's obviously going to be spoilers, and I'm not going to get into like literary devices. I'm just going to do like a quick book overview and talk about some of like the social points. So this takes place 8 years later. So quick review, Midoriko at this point in book 2. I mean, it's all one book, but like it's sectioned to like book 1, book 2. So Midoriko is 20 years old now instead of 12, which is crazy. She's in her second year of college. She's got a great boyfriend, and like they're planning on like eventually when they both graduate moving in together. In the summer, she like works at a restaurant, you know, cool stuff. She's doing her own thing. Makiko, her mom, when she first visited, she was going through some health stuff, and like Natsuko said she was like severely skinny and like, you know, drank more than she ate, that kind of thing. And she, you know, her health kind of improved. She was able to put on some weight, and like, interestingly enough, like because she's healthier, even though she's older, she appears younger according to Natsuko. And she mentions like as she gets older, she resembles their mom more, which is just kind of sweet. And something Makiko speaks about, like, when she has frequent phone calls with Natsuko, is how she doesn't want Midoriko to have to take care of her financially in her old age. So she's just kind of like, oh, what do I do? And I think that's something that a lot of parents think about lately. Some people view their kids as, like, their retirement plan, but, well, first off, in my opinion, that's not ethical, because why are you going to give birth to someone with the expectation that they serve you? If they want to help, great. I do think families in general should like help each other, but I don't think you should have a child for them to hopefully fulfill that burden for you. But anyway, so basically she's, you know, in this economy, that's also like, at least where I am in this economy, unfortunately, a lot of people like in that age range, like in like young adult age ranges, are having to tell their parents like, look, if you are betting on me, I literally cannot afford to. Like, they are barely staying afloat. Like, even if they want to, they can't afford to take care of their parents. So it's very sad. Don't know what's going to happen with that. But yeah. So the story mostly follows, again, Natsuko's narrative. Well, really, it is all Natsuko's story. We just got a glimpse into her family members' experiences through their conversations, right? So at this point, Natsuko's 38. And so she is, you know, last we talked, her career was kind of like not so hot, and she's like, oh, do I want kids? I don't know, but like, guess I'm gonna get older, like what's going on? Like all those things that quite honestly I'm feeling at my age now in my late 20s. I'm like, oh, like you only get to live one, well, you know, I believe you only live one life on earth, so like, I gotta make the most of it. Can't have regrets, no pressure. Anyway, I think a lot of people can relate to those challenges. So, and my notes are on my phone. So, hence, yeah. So Natsuko gives us some insight into, like, her dating and stuff, because while she was talking about her, you know, potentially wanting a kid earlier, she was very single. And she never really mentioned that much about, like, a guy, right? Which, in heterosexual relationships, you know what happens, and then you got a kid. So, anyway, Natsuko gives us some, you know, information about her past romantic life. So she's only had intimacy or sex. I don't know the rules about like what words are going to get flagged or not. But anyway, she only has had sex with one person. It was her long-term boyfriend when she was younger. And she loved him very, very much, but she just had no interest in sex. I believe now we would say that she is asexual. And so she would have sex with him because she felt like it was a social expectation, and she would like talk to her friends and like kind of try to get their opinion, because she was like, well, I've only had sex with one person, so like, I don't know, like, you know, they would have some girl talk, right? Because she wanted to get some other people's input. And she never connected with their friends when they talked about sexuality. Like, that just wasn't something she could relate to them on. Like her friends seemed to desire sex, and she was like, I love my boyfriend, but no, like she just hated the process of sex. And when you consider that maybe she was asexual, that makes sense, right? So she's considering sperm donation to have a child, but also I got the time period or in my earlier video really wrong for this book because they reference like a certain political candidate that is pretty current. So I think last time, I think in the last video I maybe said 2012, but I think that's wrong. I don't know. Anyway, at the time that this story is taking place, wherever it is, um, sperm donation is very controversial in Japan. As in, like, people don't really talk about it. If people do sperm donation, it's usually like a heterosexual couple with difficulty to conceive, and they usually don't tell the child. The child usually finds out at like the death of a parent or something like that, which can, we'll get into that in a minute. So basically, she is considering, but she's not quite sure. And so she reached out to an individual anonymous donor because the thing is, if you are a single person, it's difficult. And again, this is like in the context of the story and the location and, all that, right? So for her, where she is in Japan during the time period the book takes place, it's difficult for single people to get sperm donations from like official sources. So she reached out to an individual donor, an anonymous donor, and she also reached out to a Japanese sperm bank, and she received no response from either. She also reached out to a sperm bank in Denmark because in Denmark, sperm donation was a little more open and they can ship worldwide. So it was like a more viable option. But the difficulty for her there is she mentions that English is like the language that she would need to use to communicate with the people working at the sperm bank in Denmark, and she says that she's not comfortable in her English proficiency. So, and all this like happens over the course of time. It's like all of this happening at once as the story goes. It's not like problem, solution, no. So if I'm going through this scattered, like that's why, because it's like all at once. So at the same time all this is happening, she's working on a novel that is about like gangs. And she's supposed to be doing research on gangs for her novel, but it's been like 2 years and it's not clicking. Oh, she had a collection of works that were gathered together and published as her first book, and that's been very successful. So good for her. Love that for her because she was really stressed about it, but it's the only book she has published. So, she's back in that sense where she's like, oh, what am I going to do? Like, she'll do the one-off essay here and there for like individual like publishing pieces, but yeah, so she's like, what am I gonna do? Like, she's a writer, but she's having trouble writing, and that's big problem given the context. So she sees a documentary that focuses on the stories of children of anonymous donors who found out that their parents, the person they perceived to be their biological parent, was not, right? And usually this would occur in ways that were leaving the child of donors like traumatized, right? Like they would find out suddenly in like a family fight when someone would what's it called, not disclaim them, they would disown them in like an argument, and then they'd be like, what do you mean you're not my parent? Or a family member would let something slip in anger, or a parent passed, a parent as in like the parent who raised them, right, would pass, and then something would happen, and then the person who raised them wouldn't even be alive to help them process those feelings. So pretty heavy stuff. And one of the people in that video is a man named I think Aizawa, I think. Again, I'm not great with pronunciations. If anyone else knows, please comment, because it would be great for me to know. But he is part of an organization called, I believe, Children of Donors. It's been a while since I've read the book. By that I mean a couple weeks, and I have bad memory. But yeah, so part of Children of Donors. And it's basically an organization that is working towards having donor information public so that if children of donors want to access health information, they're able to, or if they want to reach out to the donor just to learn about them, they're able to. It's very similar to like certain open adoption laws in the United States. So basically, they advocate for that and try to like help identify donors for people. They also do like events where they basically try to lobby against sperm donation as a whole. Um, yeah, and so Azawa basically had some like discussion events where people could come together and just talk about donors, right? And like basically, the children are feeling like they are lived a lie, and that's the main issue that's causing a lot of the distress. So for Natsuko, she brings up the question of like, well, if from the start I inform the child they are from a donor, is does that make it ethical, right? Because if the issue is the secrecy, the lying, etc., then she's wondering, well, if I never keep secrets, if this is just the normal, right? Like for the child, then it won't, will that help alleviate that, right? Um, so that's something she's wondering and debating, and she's asking people, and people, everyone has a different opinion on it, and basically, it's a lot of heavy stuff to consider. So, oh, so she has a friend Rai, who she is having marriage issues, and basically, this is a friend from like a former social circle that they didn't quite click, but eventually, like they have fun and meet up one on one because. And even Natsuko mentions like when they get together, like all they do is talk about their kids, and she's like, I can't connect to that. So that kind of makes it hard because they're not considering everybody. And of course, there's nothing wrong with talking about your kids if you're a parent. But if it's like a mommy club, that, then what's the point in her being there, right? Like they're not including her. They're not talking about topics that she can speak on, right? It's not including her. So, yeah. Um, anyway, her friend Rai was in that group and decided to like remove herself from that group. And they met up one on one, and Rai mentions having like marriage issues, and she says she regrets like essentially she feels like she followed in her mother's footsteps by being free labor with and I don't think I can say this word, but a kitty. Free labor with a kitty. And a lot of women feel that way. A lot of women in lots of cultures feel like they become married single moms, and essentially they feel that, as resentment builds between relationships but as they are working and raising kids and taking care of the house, like if they don't have an equal partner in that situation, then essentially the partner is dead weight. And it's just easier at that point for a lot of women to, dump the dead weight adult who's not carrying their load and take care of their kid on their own. So Rai's just going, that's the friend's name, I don't know if I said it. So Rai's going through a lot, and it's just making Natsuko think again about like, if she were to have a kid, she already knew, first off, romantically things would be complicated for her. But she can, starts to kind of feel like she wouldn't want to raise it with another partner, with a co-parent, basically. And Natsuko starts to grow her social circle. So she kind of becomes friends with Sengawa, her publisher, and Rika, another writer under the same publisher. And at one point, Sengawa and Natsuko talk about how Sengawa's basically an older woman, a career woman, and she always talks about how like she didn't plan to not. Well, she doesn't always talk about it, but they have a conversation about it, and she says, she didn't plan to not have kids, but she just never felt like the time was right. Like she just never felt like, okay, I need to have the kid now, like the time is now. And so she just never had a kid. And yeah, so that's just kind of her experience. And then um do, 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 Rika, or Rika, I think it's Rika. Rika is a single mother, and interestingly enough, so she's a very famous author in the story, right? So she's a very famous author, and like people know her. She does TV interviews and stuff, and she's very private. Like one time she didn't have a sitter, so like she went to an interview with like her daughter on her lap, and everyone was like, "Whoa." And she's just like, yeah, the sitter wasn't available, and just kept on going with her interview. And so it's interesting because she's like the powerhouse working woman. She's a single mom, but like a really great mom. Like they're so bonded. And she had a relationship with the child's father, but he ended up being not just not in the picture. So yeah. So basically, Natsuko says at a dinner with the two of them that she's really, really considering sperm donation. Like, she really wants a child, and she feels like she could do it alone. And Rika's like, do it. Yeah, absolutely. She's like, I'm so much better off. She was like, if, my daughter's father was here, everyone would be significantly less peaceful, less happy. There would be more work, more struggle, blah, blah, blah. Like, do it. You can do it. And Sangawa doesn't really say anything, but then they walk home together from Rika's house where they had the dinner, and at this point she's like, they've had a few drinks, but that doesn't excuse it. But this is why I think she was like so free, said it so freely. But Sangawa basically told Natsuko that having a child would end her career, and she said that she's a great writer, but she wouldn't, basically her career would be over if she had a kid. She was like, you can't do both successfully, shared her 2 cents on that. And Natsuko was like, I'm gonna have a kid, like, I'm doing this, like, screw you, and like left. And they didn't speak for a couple months, and Sangawa, spoiler alert, later died of cancer before they could really reconcile that. And so that's pretty sad. So then, okay, so Natsuko calls, she calls her sister Makiko, and she's like, yeah, I'm really gonna do it. I'm gonna do sperm donation. And Makiko was like, don't do it. Like, you're automatically putting yourself in financial hardship. Like, our family was in a rough place, and like, why would you want things to be hard for your kid? And Natsuko is like, they got into a big fight, and Natsuko sometimes sends Maki and Midoriko like a little bit of money, and she basically says like, oh, you just don't want me to have a kid because you're afraid that the money would go to my kid instead of you. And like, they go back and forth, and both of them just are hurt. It's very sad. So then Natsuko ends up, I'm finding my place in the, hang on, I'm finding my place. Okay. Oh, also I forgot to mention, the man Aizawa, who was conceived from a donor, she actually develops like a friendship with him, and they meet up to talk about things, and about like, they talk about her book. She events lots of different donor events and things like that. He is in a relationship when they meet, so it's not like dates, although over time Natsuko starts to have feelings she does not express, and she is very aware of the fact that he has a girlfriend that he got with when he was with someone else. So she's like very mindful of appropriate conversations and appropriate contact, things like that. Okay, so Natsuko is very sad because she hasn't heard back from any of the sperm banks, but she has heard back from an anonymous sperm donor, and they meet for dinner. And on paper, he seemed, fine, but they meet at a dinner to kind of talk about what the process would look like, the different options, things like that. And the guy's just a total perv. Like, he is just scum of the earth. He is obsessed with his sperm. He is obsessed with, he has like a breeding thing, okay? And he basically, it's implied he starts doing something under the table, And so obviously she runs out because, gross, you're horrible, ew, why? Like, I mean, I know why, but no, like, Ugh, gross. Okay, so, Yuriko is Azawa's girlfriend, and she's also part of the Children of Donors organization. So basically, after this instance at the restaurant with the creepy anonymous sperm donor, she like walks anywhere but home because she just like she's mad at her sister. She just is mad at everybody. She's mad at the situation. She's disturbed by what happened. So she ends up running into Yuriko just coincidentally. And so they sit down and talk. Now, at this point, spoiler, Yuriko and Azawa have broken up. But Natsuko doesn't know that because she hasn't spoken to Azawa in a while. She's been mindful of creating some distance. But they sit on a bench and they just talk. And Yuriko basically said that she's against bringing children into the world under all circumstances, donor or not. Including like natural conception with two partners, because she thinks it's selfish and unfair to the child. Because she basically says like it's a gamble. You can't guarantee your child happiness. Let's say there are 10 children in a room asleep, and if you wake them all up, 9 of them will be happy you woke them up. But one of those 10 will be miserable their whole lives. And basically she says having a child is like that, and that one child's unhappiness or that risk of unhappiness bringing a child into the world isn't worth their potential happiness of having brought into the world. So yeah. And Azawa calls and tries to reconnect with Natsu romantically, and she's like, no, because I can't have sex. And she's like, she basically like feels really sad and dejected, and she's like, I can't have a kid. She's like, I can't because what Yuriko said really hit her hard, and then also she's just like, there were so many things. Yeah, there were so many things, but that was the main thing. So basically, one thing is they get together for Midoriko's birthday in Osaka every year, and every year I'm reading for a birthday dinner. And so Midoriko calls and like they have a normal conversation, and then at the end she's like, hey, are you still coming for my birthday? Because like you and my mom aren't talking. And she's like, yes, I'm still coming for your birthday. And she's like, just make amends. Like, and Midoriko doesn't mention the sperm donation at all, but she's just like, family's important. So anyway, then there's a phone call between Natsu and Maki. And she basically apologizes. They both apologize, and they basically agreed to support each other and be there for each other no matter what, and just be loving, because that's what's important in a family. So Natsuko takes the trip to go visit for her birthday dinner, Midoriko's birthday dinner, but she arrives early, so she actually visits the house she lived in that her mom and sister ran away from after her dad's disappearance / passing. But anyway, the place they ran away from when she was a kid. So she visits it, and she sees that it's locked, and so she sits in the stairwell, and she gets a phone call from Azawa, who it's also his birthday. He and Midoriko have the same birthday, interestingly enough. But he calls and he asks to meet for 30 minutes. And he's like, yeah, not to be weird, but I remember you saying you'd be in Osaka on this day. So I took a train here and just called for like 20, 30 minutes of your time. That's it. That's all I'm asking for. So they walk around. They ride a Ferris wheel. Recurring motif from book 1, the Ferris wheel, right? Okay. Just make a note of that. So they ride a Ferris wheel, and he basically offers to father a child for Natsuko. So the book jumps to 2 years later. So 2 years later, Natsu is 40 years old, and she has Azawa's baby. Spoiler alert, my bad. End of the book. So she has his baby, and he's a friend, not a partner. Basically, Natsuko will raise the baby alone, and if the baby ever wants to know, she'll raise the baby alone, fully telling them that they are the product of a sperm donation conception versus a romantic partner. And if the baby ever wants to know his father, then they will tell the baby. And so, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. She has a daughter, not a son. Unless I wrote that wrong. I'm pretty sure she has a daughter, but basically that's the plan. And so she's going to continue her writing career. She's going to raise her baby. And ultimately, everyone was able to heal and support each other and move forward how they needed to, even if they didn't necessarily agree with each other. And I love the way the story explored motherhood, careers in motherhood, familial support, the way that, like, women having to do it all. Oh my goodness. And also just like how your upbringing impacts you as an adult. That's a major theme in this book is like your childhood upbringing can impact your adult life. Like, so much. Amazing. 10 out of 10. So definitely read it. And yeah, I liked it.